right, welcome everybody to the Blue and Gold podcast. The point of this podcast is really to outline Naval Academy grads doing great things out in the world. I believe there's a gap in just connections. It's the same concept as the millionaire next door. You never know who's in your city until you really get out there and network. So that's the whole point of this podcast. First episode, we have Eric Compton. He owns 25 plus units, a thriving cafe here locally in Norfolk, and he is absolutely crushing it. So Eric, introduce yourself to the goats.
All right. Hi, I'm Eric. First time, so please excuse the awkwardness. I born in Virginia, raised in Hawaii, went to the academy class of 2020. Came out here down to Norfolk in it's fall of 20, I think, at this point. I dabbled in real estate, but met Joffrey at that point. He was, getting into the realtor side of things, and from there, my real estate journey kind of took off, if you will. I think we closed on a couple of little places within the first 6 months, and then, since then, we've been slowly growing the business side of things, the numbers side of things, to turn this into something that, lets me retire early. So
That's awesome. That's awesome. So, did you know that you wanted to do real estate like while in the academy?
So not until the very, very end. What was it? My first semester, I bought a house. We just got our second class career starter loans. I thought I was cool, Everyone was going out. I was like, I'm gonna buy a house. We can, go hang out over the weekends. I'll be special, right?
Yeah.
So found a little place at DTA, picked that up. We closed December 2019, came back next semester, and about a month in, COVID happened.
Oh.
So they kicked everyone out. They're like, everyone go home, don't come back. So I'm stuck with this this house that I bought. We're not using it. I have no way to pay for it. So I was like, well, I don't know what to do now.
Yeah.
I screwed up. So I went to Airbnb, listed on Airbnb, enlisted one of my buddy's local girlfriends to help me clean it. And then, the first month or two, we actually started turning a profit. And I was like, hold on a sec. Like, I'm with my girlfriend on the beach in Pensacola,
Yeah.
and I have this house that I mistakenly bought somehow that's making me money, to do things that I want to do. And so, at that point, I started getting a little more into it with all the free time from COVID. Read Rich Dad Poor Dad, like everyone does. Shout out to Amazon for that suggestion. And kind of kept building a little bit from there. During the downtime, I picked up a duplex, kind of buying into the financial freedom thing. I think I'm inherently lazy. I don't want to work for the next 40 years. I would love to retire, be able to surf, work a dive bar. And so this seemed like the most feasible option for someone like me who, I'm pretty good with numbers, but overall pretty average. But there's a tried and true set formula through real estate that I was slowly discovering that would take me to a place where I could be or retired early and financially free.
Yeah.
And so it kind of built from there. As I would say, probably around the time I graduated, I understood somewhere that I didn't want to work forever.
Yeah.
And so that was when I kind of started turning into the real estate thing. And then, met you, and I was like, oh, look, like someone's done it before.
Yeah.
Someone that I can relate to. We both went to school. He's, a few years ahead of me, but it gives me a track to follow. Yeah. Like, you did this, this, and this. So if I do this, this, and this, then, at some point I won't be going to a ship in the morning. Yeah. I will be sitting where you're sitting. Yeah. And so that's kind of where it started kicking in for me.
That's awesome. So you became an accidental landlord, and it kind of trickled down from there, and you got interested. That's awesome. It's kind of like a little bit like my story. So I bought a house here in Virginia Beach, and I had roommates, did the whole house hacking thing, lived for free, And then when I was scheduled to go on deployment, I didn't want those roommates living in my house because they were, Naval Academy grads. They were, you know how it is. You get out of Naval Academy and it's like,
You're the king of the world.
yeah, you're king of the world. It's really like college. It's like your first year of college, really,
Yeah.
because you're like free. And I didn't want them staying in my house, so I essentially Airbnb'd my primary residence when I went on deployment and came back with I think 50 or 60K in my bank account, and I was like, man, I was out here on deployment, making money, but at the same time, I came back to 50K in my bank account, and that's what essentially kind of jump started and sparked more interest into real estate investing.
So how did that work? So I know my big struggle on deployment was, I had a few long-term rental properties at that point. I wrote up like a black book, this is how you do everything.
Yeah.
I gave it to my girlfriend, and the property managers took care of it. But with Airbnb, it's constant. You're cleaning the place every couple of days. You're looking to respond to people every couple of days. How did you manage that intensive time
Yeah.
while you were on deployment?
Yeah, so I hired my mom. My mom at the time was living in Charlotte, so she didn't even live in the area. So I hired her, and she essentially hired cleaners here to essentially, check up on the house, get what the guests needed, and then I even had backups. There was a few academy grads living in the same neighborhood as me, so if I drastically needed something last minute, my mom would contact them, and they would essentially help me out. As far as, multiple properties, that might not work, but I just had the one at the time. And then obviously, I purchased more when I came back to, 50K in my bank account. I was like,
let's do something. Yeah.
I could definitely do this. But yeah, that's kind of how I got started in real estate investing and things like that. You mentioned the academy loan. So you use the funds from the academy loan to purchase your first investment property. Can you talk a little bit about, do you wish you would have used it different? I know some people have different advice. Some people say you should, just hold on to it until you graduate and you really know what you want to do. Some people spend it on, Dodge Challengers and stuff like that. No disrespect to anybody who,
bought that new car, yeah.
Mustangs and stuff like that. So just talk about, just what was your logic behind, buying that house? I know it was for parties, which is legit. But you actually spent it in a smart way. So do you have any advice for current mids in that situation?
So I think, going back before the academy, my mom forced me to work in high school. So I had a job while I was in high school. And so that helped me kind of, gave me the money to buy my first car, which I shipped out to the academy plebe year. It gave me a little bit more of a safety net, if you will, right? Because, you go to the academy, you get paid $100 a month. It's not enough. And so with that, I was a little more comfortable with, I've got time till I get out of here. I can play in the stock market with this, maybe see what I can do.
Yeah.
And so, I had a car, I think, which is the big thing,
Yeah.
because I couldn't even tell you how many buddies I had who, the second graduation was finished, they hightailed it back to Navy Federal to get that first loan.
Yeah.
And then showed up with nice new cars at the beginning of second class year. But I already kind of had that itch scratched, if you will.
Yeah.
And so that kind of left me, with the loan in my bank account. My great grandfather, kind of the American dream story. He was an immigrant from Italy. He came over here with nothing, and got into the construction business.
Okay.
Started his own building business. I think made a couple of smart calls, maybe when the market was down, stocking up on a whole bunch of materials and land, so that when it turned back up and everyone else was, still struggling a little bit, he was ahead of the power curve.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so he kind of took this little business he started and he built it into something worth a good deal of money.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And so, whenever we went up to visit him in Michigan, he had this huge house, 15, 20 acres. The house was a bazillion bedrooms, the first like jacuzzi tub I'd ever seen. So to me, like, he was doing something right.
Yeah.
So he had the money. So fundamentally, I knew, like, houses, real estate, like, it worked because, he had done it from nothing.
Yeah.
And so that was a little bit of the safety buffer, if you will. Like, in the back of my head, I could always tell myself, oh, like, he did it. So, there's got to be something there that's fundamentally okay. Like, it will, even if I mess it up, even if I don't pay what I should, or, I mismanage it or whatever it is, it will be worth it eventually if I can kind of survive the first few years.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so that just having seen that kind of gave me a little bit more confidence going into that as it, this is something that I can do, right?
Yeah.
Like, it will be okay in the end, even if it hurts for a little while.
Yeah, exactly. So he kind of influenced you, and I think that's what we're trying to do with this podcast. Like, it's great power in seeing somebody from the same background, build, empires. And I think, that's the ultimate goal of, this movement, to give people motivation. Like, there are people out here, active duty, just absolutely, like, crushing it, buying properties, building, wealth and stuff like that. So, as I said before, I appreciate you, you being on this podcast, just, being motivation, to the future generation and the current generation. So that's awesome. That's awesome. As far as, buying your next few properties, can you touch on that? Were they like VA loans? Were they FHA loans? Like, what'd you do to kind of, after you bought your first one while you're still at the academy, what'd you do after that to kind of, scale your portfolio?
So I haven't used a VA loan yet. The paperwork kind of scares me. So we went the private route. I used investor money, just, family, friends, family, stuff like that, who had money, who either didn't know how to do the real estate, weren't confident in it, didn't want that time involvement piece that comes with getting started. And so that's how I funded my first few properties. Kind of helped me, now that we're in the multifamily stuff. It's made it a little easier to get into the fundraising side of things. But it made it very easy for me to, use the money I had to put down, but then have the money without the paper trail. In the sense that, the VA is going to look at me and say, all right, why are you buying a house? I couldn't use a VA loan, but even an FHA loan, or 203 or anything like that, I didn't have any assets. I had no work experience. I was, a college kid. And so it helped me kind of skirt around some of those requirements to give me access to money to build a little bit of a portfolio, if you will, and to put together a couple more properties.
Yeah, and I think that's awesome because everybody's route is different. I use, 2 VA loans right off the bat to buy my first 2 properties, and then we eventually went like conventional, and then I partnered up with people like you were talking about, kind of, partner up in investing, and that's how I really, scale my portfolio. So let's talk about your cafe. You own a cafe here locally.
I do.
Talk about, how do you even get into that? You went from, real estate to owning a cafe. And I own a cafe in Columbus, Ohio. And I remember us talking, and it was just like, it randomly came up and was like, oh, I own a cafe too. I was like, no kidding. So just talk about, how'd you even stumble upon, owning a cafe?
Yeah. So probably not the best investment story. If you're watching, don't repeat. We had just bought an Airbnb, and we were working through furnishing it, and like Craigslist, Facebook Marketplace, all those things can be a great place to get like secondhand furniture if you're willing to put in a little bit of work and clean it up. And so that's what I was doing. I think we were watching some playoff game maybe, and in a bar, just scrolling through Facebook Marketplace looking for furniture for this Airbnb, and it popped up coffee shop for sale. I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. Like I want to get into the business side of things someday, and so this. I was like, maybe this is the place to learn. And so I messaged the guy, and, the standard, like, click, respond, hi, is this available? Didn't really think anything of it. Woke up the next morning, he'd responded. So we met that day. After hours, the coffee shop kind of walked through. He told us, what he was doing, where he was going with it, how it was kind of like his brainchild that he'd built. I don't know anything about coffee. I didn't start drinking coffee until I went on deployment, and it was like, I need something that will keep me awake and functional.
Yeah.
And so at that point, I was like, I don't know anything about this. I've never done business before, but it was a cheap and low cost way to get the business side lessons. So talked to my wife, and our kind of mindset going into it was, even if we lose everything, if we bankrupt this place, we will have learned those lessons now at 23 or 24, whatever it was, for the cost of $40,000. That's what I paid for it. I paid $40,000, and I was okay with losing that money so that 10, 15 years from now, when I'm opening my dive bar, when we're going into business, we've learned those lessons the hard way. And so we know what to avoid, what to do and what not to do. Kind of a little bit of exposure into the politics and the paperwork behind running a business, as I'm sure you know. So we bought it. Took a couple weeks of leave, spent them all down at City Hall, arguing with it. Everyone was on COVID hours, so nobody wanted to actually do their job or be there. But, spent those couple weeks down there arguing with the city, pushing our permits, business license, health inspection, all those kinds of things. Got it up and running. So we kept on a barista that had been there previously as our manager. And honestly, that was the first lesson we learned. I was like, he's done it before. He knows what's going on. This will be our guy. Yeah. And he turned out to absolutely terrible manager. He was good at making coffee, and that was about it. Yeah. But he had the experience of what had happened before, so we could kind of carry that on into the future. And so it just kind of started running it. A lot of ups and downs in the beginning, a lot of learning curves. I will stay away from businesses with perishable items in the future. That was a big lesson. But we've kind of over time started trying to automate it. So it requires less and less involvement from us.
So building your systems out.
Yeah, exactly. Something that I can kind of rinse and repeat. Okay. So the first maybe 2 months were kind of tough, but then we hit the summer. Business started going into a swing of things, and I was like, look at the returns I'm making on this place. This is, it is a little more work at the beginning than buying a property is. Yeah. But I was 10xing what I make on a good single family home in this coffee shop that I paid next to nothing for.
If you don't mind me asking, what do you net a month now, just off of starting that business?
So it depends on the month. Something else I found out after we bought is it's a bit of a cycle over the year. But we, when we peaked last summer, we were making $4,000 or $5,000 a month. Yeah. Off of a $40,000 investment. So it was insane for me. Like this is awesome. We slowed down a little bit over the winter. Kind of took that time to hire some new people to work on building a brand, getting social media outreach going, kind of connecting with the local either coffee shops, artists, markets, stuff like that. So we started bringing those things in, which I think have really helped. There was also a local coffee trail, if you will, and so it's a little punch card. You go around a bunch of different coffee shops, participate, and try their different coffees, get a free drink afterwards, something like that. And that happened last fall for the first time, and I thought our business was just doing great. Yeah. Coffee trail ended, and business started going like this, and I was like, hold on a second. I don't know enough to know it's wrong, but something is wrong because I am not putting as much money in my pocket at the end of every month. And so we got back into that, and we just started to back up a couple months ago, but sales have been up 10%. I've been making 10% more every month just by, starting this little coffee trail. Yeah. And so my wife's been running it, but super simple. She reached out to a couple different coffee shops, got them on board. We sent out the cards to the Instagram page, and business has been booming. since we did that again. So definitely another lesson learned.
Yeah, absolutely.
But we're looking to pay back our initial investment inside of 2 years, which is phenomenal in my view, at least.
Yeah, absolutely. That's awesome. What's the actual name of your cafe? So the local people here in Norfolk can come
Equinox Coffee Shop. It's a little place in just outside of Ghent.
Okay.
Yeah, it's something else.
All right, you guys gotta go support.
I would appreciate it.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Can you talk about a little bit about actually like buying a current business? Because I know in my experience with the cafe in Columbus, Ohio, we had to like hire an attorney. The attorney cost a lot of money, but it was all worth it at the end because we did our due diligence. So we purchased ours for $300,000, but our cafe slash hookah cafe makes
It's killing it.
Yeah, it nets around like 30 to 40K a month.
Yeah.
So just doing the math, like that's ridiculous for buying it for 300K, which is awesome. So can you talk about like a little bit about like the process? Like, did you hire attorneys, or since this was a 40,000 investment, you didn't figure it was like necessary and you did it yourself? Just touch a little bit about.
So I did a lot of YouTubing and Google learning.
Okay.
YouTube
University.
Exactly. Hey, it hasn't failed me yet. So we went that route. We kind of looked at general numbers. Did not do the due diligence. I should have put that out there right now. I got lucky that it did work and that we weren't buying a failing business. So definitely something I would recommend to someone buying a business for the first time is do the actual due diligence. But most of it was kind of simple, straightforward. It was a wire to him, a contract we signed that he had his attorney draft. And so the bulk of the heavy lifting was, again, just with the permitting, the licensing, getting everything. I had no idea how many different tax accounts I would have to have and how many different people wanted a chunk of the money I was making.
Yeah.
So honestly, that was the hardest part, was making sure we were in compliance. And I'm sure, having an attorney, having a broker, something like that, someone who had done this before and frequently that was their job, would have made that a lot easier.
It's expensive, though.
I'm sure it is.
It was probably more than 20K. It was probably closer when it's all said and done. It's like 35K. But he did, he drew up the contract. He made sure, we were all prepared to take over the business. And we actually, we sat in the business for about 3 weeks, just making sure everything like lined up, like his numbers on books, was matching his current clientele and stuff like that. We sat in there with like a counter to make sure. we were like extra like paranoid because we did have to we had to come up with $100,000, and he actually financed the rest interest free.
Oh, that's awesome.
Which is legit.
Yeah.
But it was kind of nerve wracking. Taking over something you don't know anything about.
Absolutely.
It was uncharted like territory. We knew nothing about running, a cafe, and like you said, perishable items. That's like my biggest fear.
Yeah.
Is really opening up a like full service restaurant. Like I don't think I could do it.
No.
And I actually do know an Academy grad. We're gonna have him on here. He runs one in Jacksonville, North Carolina, and he has like A-list stars that go there and stuff like that. It's like
good for him.
Yeah. But yeah, good for him because
I couldn't do it. No,
Yeah.
The attorney is definitely a good point though. It cost me my 2 weeks of leave selfishly. But if I went back and did it again, that would definitely be the route I went. Just because of the headache, the paperwork, the being in over my head and kind of like reactively trying to learn to put out fires to get permitted. We were down for about a month in between closing and all of our permits finally going through after he pulled his. So it definitely took a little while to get us up and running again, get back off the ground. And I think, obviously our coffee shop is much smaller and was a lot cheaper. But having that expertise, even if it's just, every week, every 2 weeks, something like that, a consultation call.
Yeah.
but using the attorney like y'all did, I think definitely would be the route for anyone trying to open up a business or buy a business or anything like that.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So, how is Swole Life treating you? But you're like deep in it. You graduated 2020,
man.
so you're literally like deep into the Swole Life. I'm a prior Swole as well, so just touch on that a little bit. How's the Swole Life?
Well, it's we're keeping on in the Navy here. It's made the real estate thing is my passion. That's something that I would wake up early for every day, work all day, and go to bed feeling like I'd done something that day.
Yeah.
That's something that I really care about. And so kind of balancing that with the Navy life, with the Navy time requirements, if you will, has definitely been tough. First graduated, it was my TAD summer, so nothing was going on. They were paying us hand over fist to sit around and go to concerts or drink in the backyard, go to the beach, whatever it was.
Yeah.
And so I was dabbling in real estate at that point, and I started my plan or my to-do list. And at that point, I felt if I didn't, if I had 2 or 3 things on that day, it was a lost day because I wasn't putting in the effort. I wasn't doing as much as I could be to get myself to where I wanted to be.
Yeah.
And so I started almost like making up tasks, little things, something that didn't actually really matter, but just things so that I could fill out my planner and feel good about myself. And so I adopted that bad habit and kind of carried it into when I got to the ship, when I started actually working for the Navy.
Yeah.
And then it just got overwhelming immediately because, I was at the ship and I wouldn't get home until 4 or 5 on a good day. And then I would have this, to-do list a mile long of things that I kind of made up. And so the biggest learning curve for me was saying, all right, what actually needs to happen? Like, what is going to get me from point A to point B?
Yeah.
And what is kind of just fluff in there?
Yeah.
So cutting it down was a big kind of quality of life improvement for me.
Just focusing on
just
like that.
being able to focus on the thing that matters, right? Like I want to do the $10,000 an hour tasks, not the $10 an hour tasks.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so kind of filtering those out was really big for me as far as productivity, as far as balancing those two. And then, I got married, and so I want to spend time with my wife. I want to be at home.
Yeah. How do you do because I was active duty once upon a time, and I had a lot going on like you, multiple properties, stuff like that. And it was, tough for me to balance Navy life. Swole life is hard. And I kind of tell people all the time, I have no regrets about being a swole because I think it, taught me so many things. Like, first of all, you get to your ship and you're thrown right into a leadership role, right off the bat. But then you're responsible for getting your qualifications on top of, actually doing your job. And on deployments, you're at least working probably 14 or 15-hour days. So I think it, in hindsight, I think it prepared me for entrepreneurship and playing different roles.
Absolutely.
And it threw me into the leadership role, which, I was kind of, uncomfortable with doing. But, shout out to all the souls out there. I think, it's definitely the best community. But, of course, I'm biased.
It definitely teaches you lessons that have been helpful with this real estate thing. The biggest thing was kind of making sure I had time for everyone and everything that I wanted to do.
Yeah.
So it got hard at times. The fixer upper we closed on at the end of last year when we were going through, and I was fixing it up myself because I'm cheap. I would go to work in the morning. I would leave work at maybe 4:30. I would go straight over there, and I wouldn't get home until 9 or 9:30 at night.
Yeah, that's insane.
And then at that point, I've got my to-do list of paperwork, computer work, whatever else for real estate. So at that point, the biggest thing that helped me get through that was my wife, was Addie, because she bought into the real estate vision that I believe in. And so she was supportive. She was there when I needed her. She picked up my slack when I couldn't handle everything. And she didn't ride me all the time for, why aren't you here? Why aren't we doing these things? she gave me the space to do the thing that I love. And so I think that was very, very important to me in being able to get that done. And now that that's done, I rewrote my Vivid Vision about a month ago, actually. April 7th, it starts every year. And so I've started including in there, it used to be, I want to hit this many doors, I want to be making this much money every year. Kind of the numbers things, right? The stuff that I thought was important.
Yeah.
But, it's kind of evolved into this is my vivid vision for my life, not my business.
Yeah.
And so, there are still those things, right? I want to hit this many doors this year. I want to be making this much money. But it started to include other things, like, I want to spend this much time reading, or read this many books. I want to spend this much time talking to my family, my little sisters. Addie and I, we're going to go on this many date nights, at least every year. I want to do, have my weekends free. Not be working over the weekend so I can spend that time with her. So kind of evolving that vivid vision from what I thought was important at one point to what's important to me now, to focus on, more of my family and trying to give her the time that she deserves.
Yeah.
While I'm trying to do this, trying to balance the Navy career.
Yeah.
Has been difficult, but also rewarding for me. That way, I go to work in the morning. I love my guys. I love spending time with them. I love looking out for them. It just makes me feel like I'm doing something right, shielding them from all the crap that falls down from everyone else.
Yeah.
So I can spend the time doing that in the day. I make my lunch hour. I eat lunch real quick and then take care of all the business hours things. So the phone calls, I got to make the emails, stuff like that. That's on my real estate to-do list. So that when I get home in the afternoon, it's maybe 30, 45 minutes of work. And then, it's 6 o'clock. So we can go for a run. We can get dinner, spend time together. And so maybe it slowed down the real estate progress a little bit. But in my opinion, it's worth it.
Yeah.
Now having a family. Now, it's just the two of us. We're not quite where you're at. So, I'd be curious because you're killing it as a realtor right now. And you have investment properties, and you have the cafe. You also have a son now.
Yeah.
So you're married with a son, with the investments, with the real estate, with the realtor. You have 2 phones. I couldn't keep up with that. That's how you know someone's busy. They got a work phone and a play phone, right?
Yeah.
I don't know how you do that. That's got to just be a new level of really finding, the full 24 hours in a day and breaking it down so that you can work, you can sleep, and you can have time to spend with the folks you love.
Yeah, I would say, like you said, having your wife on board, definitely helps. Especially when, I was active duty Navy, her, holding down a lot of the stuff,
Mm-hmm.
I was working, literally, 18-hour days. But I think, first you have to get, your systems down. And then once your systems are, maxed out and you got those, you have to hire leverage at that point because you can't do it. You can't do it all. There's a book that I highly recommend. It's called Who Not How by Dan. I think I told you.
You recommend it? I bought it. It is on my reading list for this year. Yeah.
But essentially, it's about if you want to get something done, you shouldn't ask, oh, how should I do it? You should ask, who is the correct person to partner up with
to do it for you.
To do it,
Right.
And the key word is, partner up. You're just not, hiring anybody to do any task. They have to have a passion for that task. So I think that's, a big part of it. Just getting the systems, and then once you max out on the systems, you hire leverage or you partner up with leverage. So I think that's been the saving grace. I told you the other day, I took a walk midday. It was nice.
I bet, yeah.
You have to be pretty, at a good point in your life just to take a walk.
Yeah, just spend some time just being free, doing whatever you want.
Yeah, so
that's an awesome feeling.
It's been awesome. But I appreciate you, you coming out, spending time with us, talking, about, your career, the Navy, your investments. You're absolutely crushing it. You're definitely, far ahead of me when I was, 3 years into the Navy, and I think that's just, awesome. But if there was like one thing you can leave with, the midshipmen coming up or anybody in the Navy, what would it be? What is your like one thing, your one recommendation?
I think it would be start early. They say the second best time to buy real estate is now, and the first best time is 30 years ago, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But kind of the similar thing with this, like I kind of, regardless, one could argue that you are successful at what you do, at what you love, at where you've have been, and maybe you started a couple years after I did, but it is working for you.
Yeah.
And so me, a couple years behind you, when I moved down here, when we met the first time and you started helping me start acquiring properties and build that growth, that got me started a few years earlier than I would have been if I hadn't met you, right?
Yeah.
And so, if you're here and I'm a few years behind you, but I'm building to that too, then it only stands to reason that if somebody, can watch this podcast, look at you, look at us and say, that's what I want to do. Yeah. And they start now, they start while they're at the academy, then they can kind of push that timeline back a few years, compress it a little bit. And so, if I start a couple years before you, then someone else started a couple years before me.
Yeah.
The world is your oyster. Like if I can do it, you sure as hell can do it. So I would just say start earlier. Start doing the real estate thing. Start reaching out to academy grads. Follow the network. Love the network. It's corny, but it works. There's a lot of smart, a lot of successful people out there that went to the academy. As proof right here, right? Yeah. But you did it, then I did it, and so if people just start doing it a little bit earlier, kind of following the trail that people have been blazing for years, then they can be set up with financial success for after they finish their time commitment. 5 years, they're like, I don't need the Navy at this point. I can choose, is this something that makes me passionate, something that I love, or do I want to retire, spend time with the family, whatever it is, because I have that financial stability now. Yeah. So I would just say start earlier.
Absolutely. I appreciate it. So where can the GOATs find you at? What's your Facebook and Instagram?
Oh, boy.
You need to change your Instagram tag.
I do need to change my Instagram. So I'm on JD's USNA Property Network page. On Facebook as Eric Compton. My Instagram name probably needs a little bit of work. It came when I was 8. I played RuneScape. It was this online little, I don't know, character exploration game, and I thought I was super cool, so I was Yomahomie 4. And so that's what my Instagram is now. Pending change to something a little more professional. But I also use Instagram.
Yeah,
so
that's absolutely. I appreciate you coming out today. And yeah, please feel free to, reach out to me or Eric if you have any questions about, Norfolk, or if you just want to talk about anything, just don't hesitate to reach out. I appreciate y'all.